Okay, but let's get started here. I'm super psyched to be talking to you guys. Thank you for taking the time out of your Monday evening to do this. We're going to talk about strength training, specifically for endurance athletes and specifically for distance runners. And there's a little bit of a like who, what, when, where, why, how kind of thing that we'll try and go through. But really, we'll try and give you a full, complete picture of strength training. And this is just every single time we have slides, we keep this slide at the beginning. It's both to remind ourselves and whoever we're talking to that this is really the what Chasky boils down to. And I can talk a little bit more about that at the end if people are interested in. But we are here to empower athletes and foster community. And hopefully this is a way that we can really do both of those things. We're trying to empower you guys, giving you all some knowledge that you can take on and use to make yourselves better athletes and stronger and healthier athletes. And we're also trying to foster community. And I know that's what running clubs are all about too. And it sounds like you guys have a great organization that Abigail's gotten everyone involved in. So that's super cool for us to see. Quick game plan here. I will give a quick introduction of myself so you guys kind of know who I am and why I'm talking and why maybe you should listen to this talk. We'll talk a little bit about why anyone would want to strength train, particularly runners. And then we're going to go through two specific types of strength training for power and for injury prevention. And these are very, very different types of training that we're going to do. But we'll talk about exactly what they are, how to do them, and what the purpose of each one is, a little bit into the science of that. We'll have a Q&A, and then at the end we will have I will leave a little workout if people want to do that. Totally up to you. If you want to just watch along, again, you can do it later if you want. We will have the recording, so you don't have to do it live if you're at the end of your workday and you're zonked out and you just want to watch and do it later. That's totally fine. And then lastly, these takeaways at the bottom. This is kind of what I want you guys to leave this talk with. So first of all, we want you to have an understanding of just what is strength training and why do we do it, and what are these two specific kinds of strength training that we're going to talk about. We're going to have some sample workouts that we'll give you guys, and then also some ideas for progression. So in training, we always want to be progressing. If we just do the same workout every single day, eventually we're going to kind of plateau off and that's going to become normal. So we always want to be thinking about, okay, how do we make this a little bit more challenging so that we continue to get a stimulus from it in the same way that we would from a running workout or routine. So that's the basic game plan. And if people have more questions or want to stick around at the end, I'll be happy to talk as well there. If we do go over the hour, but I'll try and keep it in the hour. Okay, so first, a little bit about me. I actually wanted to start off by saying what I am not. I am not a certified strength and conditioning specialist. So there are people out there who have either master's degrees or certified degrees in strength training. I'm not one of those people. So I am a USATF Chasky certified coach. I am a pro athlete. I've been running professionally, training myself and coaching for over 10 years at this point. But that said, I don't have a degree in strength training. Everything I've learned from people who do have those degrees, including members of our team who I ran a lot of the stuff on this presentation by, especially some of the more sciencey stuff. But just wanted to get that big caveat out there. I love talking to people. I love talking about training and physiology and all this stuff, but I don't have the letters after my name. So if you have like really in-depth sciencey questions, I will very comfortably say, I don't know the answer to that, but I will ask someone on our team who does have all those letters after their name and get back to you. Like I said at the beginning, for those of you who are here, I'm actually currently living in Quito, Ecuador, up at 9,300 feet. And I'm in the last few years popping back and forth between here and Flagstaff, Arizona. I have a cat. His name's Richard Parker. He's orange. He's not here with me now. It makes me very sad, but I'll see him soon. And I've really focused mostly on 50K to 100K ultra marathons recently, mostly on kind of fast road ultras. I've kind of just started dabbling into some trail stuff. I've gotten some FKTs recently that I've had a lot of fun with, especially during the pandemic year, just kind of when there weren't races, dabbling in other things. So I'm excited to get a little bit more into the trail scene as well. I know a bunch of you guys are trail runners, so it's a world that I have been very lucky to be surrounded by a lot of great trail runners. My training partner in Flagstaff and housemate is a guy named Jim Walmsley, who you might have heard of. He's one of the best US trail runners in the world, and just has really shown me how bad I am at trail running and how good he is at trail running. But it's been a lot of fun and a lot of motivation for me to get better at that. But yeah, that's enough about me. Um, so let's talk a little bit about strength training. And the first thing is like, why would anyone strength train in general? So, we've got this guy in the upper right corner here. Some people want to do strength training because they want to get huge. They want to get ripped. They want to be able to lift really heavy things. They want to be able to push people around. Um, and in kind of scientific terms, we're talking about increasing muscle mass, or getting swole, getting big, or we're talking about increasing muscular force, which is our ability to actually lift things. So there's almost like an aesthetic side and there's a functional side there. Um, as runners, generally, especially as distance runners, we don't really care that much about either of those things. And in fact, sometimes we might even want to avoid those things. Like there's oftentimes people talk about, oh, I don't want to do strength training because I'm worried about, oh, I'm going to put on all this muscle mass in my upper body or something, and I don't want that. It's going to slow me down or something. Um, but what we really want, and what we can really accomplish with strength training as distance runners are two things here. One is explosive power. And we'll talk about exactly what that is and how we train it. That's really good for our mechanical efficiency, which is essentially how much effort it takes to run at a specific pace, whether that's sprinting pace or ultramarathon pace, and general speed, as well as injury prevention, which I'm sure everybody here has had some experience with an injury, whether it's them or someone close to them. It's the worst. We always want to be avoiding injury. The longer career is always the one that we want in the end. So those are the two big things we're going to talk about. We'll talk about exactly how to do those. Then this last question is kind of a softball, which is which runners should strength train? And the short answer is everyone. Strength training is not just for sprinters. It's not just for track runners. It's not just for mountaineers. Every single runner can benefit from some type of strength training. And the two types that we're going to talk about specifically today are applicable to pretty much any event across the board, whether you're training for 100-meter dash or 100 miles. These types of training are going to work for you. So like I said, a lot of skinny runner guys and women will be afraid of lifting weights because they think they're going to bulk up and they're worried about that. And they're going to say, oh my gosh, I don't want to, put on extra weight that I'm going to have to carry around if I'm out running for, whatever it is, an ultra or a marathon or even a 5K. So when we talk about strength training for power, the most important thing that we're going to talk about is that the changes are going to happen in the motor unit and not the actual muscle. And we'll talk about what that means on the next slide. But this is essentially how we're going to define strength training for power, is talking about short sets of reps. So, like this example, only 3 reps, 4 sets. So you're only doing a total of 12 repetitions. That means if you're doing these squats at 90% of max, you're only doing a total of 12 squats and you're only doing them 3 at a time. That's what that language means. And you're going to do them at a pretty high weight, so 90% of your maximum. So if you can, squat 1 rep as hard as you can is say 100 pounds, you're going to do this at 90 pounds. And then the other caveat that's going to be on all of these slides about strength training for power is that this is something that you really, really want to do with a professional in a gym if you are new to it. Because when you are lifting heavy weights, it's really easy to hurt yourself or to do it wrong, which can actually be worse. So it's much, much better to do less reps or a little bit less weight and make sure your form is good and have someone who can guide you through this, versus trying to just like look in the mirror or follow it on YouTube, and then you can end up either pulling something because you're doing the motions a little bit wrong, you have a lot of weight on yourself, or worse, well, maybe not worse, but equally bad would be you end up actually ingraining movement patterns that are incorrect and are going to end up causing you to be more inefficient in the long run. So let's talk about what is actually happening and why we're not going to bulk up when we do this kind of strength training for power. This is where we're going to nerd out a little bit. I, again, love this stuff. If you let your eyes glaze over a little bit, that's okay. I was an engineer in college, so I like to dig into the science, but we won't go too deep, I promise. So when we talk about a motor unit, essentially this diagram over here on the right is is a motor unit. So you have this little lovely blue guy in here, which is essentially a neuron in your brain. And it is sending an electrical signal over a bunch of nerves. And then the nerves here are connected to all these red tubes, which are your muscle fibers. And so the muscle fibers are what actually contract and relax. And that's how we get muscular movement in the body. And so when we talk about motor unit changes, what we're talking about is not change. There's no change in the muscle necessary. We can become a lot more efficient, a lot more efficient and a lot more powerful simply by changing the structure of this motor unit without changing the muscle at all. And so that can happen in a variety of ways that I outlined here on the left. You can have more of these units that are getting triggered. So when we do things like all-out sprints, for example, we're using more of our motor units than we would use if we're just walking down the street. So the more that we do intense things, the more our body is able to trigger more units. We can increase the number of units. So we actually build new pathways from our brain to our muscle fibers. And we can also have each unit trigger more fibers. So again, in this diagram, you see all these little blue like little dendrils that come off of the nerve. You can increase the number of those connections so that the last one here is that a motor unit can require a lower electrical impulse to fire. That essentially just means that you're going to, again, fire more muscle fibers with a lower effort on your own part. So this is the kind of physiological change that we're trying to elicit when we talk about strength training for power. It's not muscular change. And that's why we don't really worry about bulking up when we do this kind of stuff. And if you want to see the perfect image, this was pretty famous. I think this came about maybe around the Chicago Marathon a few years ago. This is a distance runner named Jordan Hasse, and she weighs like 100 pounds. She's a very small person. I've met her in person. And you can see she's squatting just an absolutely enormous amount there. And I don't think she's worried about bulking up. What she's doing is training her neuromuscular system to be more efficient. So this is a really, really powerful way that everyone, whether it's a professional like Jordan Hasse, again, she's run, I think, 2:20 in the marathon. She's one of the fastest female marathoners alive right now. And what happens when we do this kind of strength training? At the end of the day, we're trying to do this last thing. We're trying to improve performance. But to get to that point, the way that we're going to do that is, number one, we're going to improve our running economy because, again, going back to that idea of being able to essentially fire more muscle fibers with fewer electrical signals. That's what's happening there. It's essentially making your brain muscle connection more efficient, which is going to improve your running economy. There's something called the strength shortening cycle, which has to do with again the brain to muscle connection. We can actually increase top end speed. Now, again, if you're a trail runner or an ultra marathoner or a marathoner, you might not be that worried about that, but that will carry down all the way on the chain. Like if you're more efficient at your top end speed and your top end speed increases, you will become more efficient at speeds below that. And there is some reduced injury risk here as well by improving running economy. So strength training for power, it's really, really important. It's something that can have a huge improvement on performance. But again, the big caveat, and you can see even Jordan here has someone who's watching her, probably giving her form tips, probably spotting her in case she's struggling with the weight on this day. You really want to have someone there who is a professional who can watch you, especially while you're getting used to it and making sure that you're not going to hurt yourself or that you're not ingraining in bad movement patterns. So I think oh no, sorry. Now we've got our sample workouts. I almost skipped this part. This part's really important. So this is a sample workout that I wrote up. So again, this is not going to be a lot of actual work. It's not going to be, the amount of time that you're spending exercising will actually not be that long. It might take you a while because you do want to make sure you're recovered well between all of these. So between each of these exercises, you probably want to take a couple minutes, and then between each set, you also probably want to take a couple of minutes. So it might actually take you quite a while, but maybe you're spending a minute or two exercising in terms of actually doing the motions. So these are simple exercises. Again, if people are curious or don't know what these are, you can type them into Google. You can ask me at the end, and I can demonstrate or anything like that. But this is just a sample. You would do this 2 to 3 times through, and again, you'd want to kind of have a guesstimate of what your max is. So that would be probably another thing that you'd want to figure out with whomever you're doing this with, like in a gym, is okay, what is my squat max? What is my deadlift max, et cetera, so that you can calibrate these workouts to yourself. And of course, like when do we do these and how often and how do we progress? These are really important questions too. So at first, I would think of these strength training sessions kind of like you would any hard structured running day. So you're going to want to do a nice decent workout, or excuse me, a nice decent warm up, which would probably be your run, and then maybe you finish at the gym and you would do your strength training work there. And I would probably start once a week. Maybe you can add in a second workout a week after you kind of get used to it, get your body used to it a little bit more. And in terms of progression, like again, how do we make this harder? How do we make it so we're not just doing the same thing forever? We don't want to add reps. Again, we want to keep the overall workload light in terms of volume, but we would want to add weight. So again, we go back to that picture of Jordan Hasse. It's like she's got, I don't even know, like 4 or 5 plates on that bar. It's insane how much she's lifting there. But so yeah, we want to build up to the point where we're able to lift really, really heavy, but just a couple times each rep. And then when we talk about stacking with hard days, what we mean by this is at first we would again treat this strength training session like it's its own, like it's a tempo run day or it's an interval day where we would just do an easy run and then our lift. One thing we can do later on is we can actually put those in the same day. So you would do, say, your interval workout, and then you would go to the gym and you would do your strength training session. Again, I wouldn't recommend doing that at first. You want your muscles to be relatively fresh when you're starting to do this, but that's a really good way to start with what we call super compensation, which is when you make your hard days really hard and then your easy days really easy. And again, I wouldn't start out with that. You want to start out with your workouts being relatively fresh, but that's a really good way to progress. And that's what a lot of people will end up doing in the long run. Okay, now we're going to talk about injury prevention. So this is a question that we've all probably asked, which is, can I still run through this? It's a question that if we've gotten to that point, we're probably not doing something right. So what we're going to talk about now is strength training for injury prevention. So that's avoiding being this guy here. These are going to be, this is a completely different idea, completely different type of training and a completely different type of physiological response that we're trying to elicit versus the strength training for power that we were just talking about. So these are going to be low or no weight exercises. We're mostly going to use our body weight. We're going to use some resistance bands. Maybe we'll build up to using some really light weights, some ankle weights, things like that. But our number one goal is injury prevention as opposed to increased power. And the way that we're going to do that is we are going to talk about increasing muscle mass, but we're going to do it in really targeted places, really specific places so that we can increase our strength. And that's probably going to come with increased muscle mass. So where is that going to be? This diagram on the right is great. And I basically stole this slide from Kimber Maddox, who is one of our certified strength and conditioning specialists. And she uses this quote, "You can't fire a cannon from a canoe," which I love. And it's basically saying that if you want to have power in your stride, you have to have a strong foundation. You have to have a strong chassis, to change the metaphor a little bit and move to a car metaphor. So all of this, the entire body is a chain, all the way from the ankle to the top of the spine. And there are specific places that runners in particular are often weak and tight. And the places that we're going to talk about are mostly in the hips and glutes, and the lower back, really all the way up the back. And a little bit of mobility stuff down into the ankle and knee. And so that's what we're going to train for here, is actually increasing muscle mass and neural filing. filing, excuse me, neural firing. That's a hard one. So in the previous one, again, we were pretty much just talking about the motor unit, the brain muscle connection in the nervous system. Now we're talking about both the muscle itself and that connection. So we both want to help the brain activate the muscles that we have, and we also want to increase the actual mass of those muscles. So this is a sample session that I think this actually might be what we're going to do when we pop into our workout. But this, again, is super different. These in particular are targeting your, these are just pure glutes. Flutter kicks are a little bit of hip flexor and lower abdominals. Fire hydrants are more glute. Dead bug is some abs, some hip flexors, some shoulder mobility. Bird dog is a lot of back. Scissor kicks is more hip flexor and abdominals. So this is the kind of stuff that we're doing for our, oh yeah, sorry, it's my window here is covering the thing. This is our hips and hip flexors. So that's why everything here is pretty much hips and hip flexors. And the way that we would do this is, this is similar to, if you've done a core workout or, if you've done like a hip routine on YouTube or something, or at a gym or with your club, you've probably done something like this. You can do it once through, you do it more or less continuously, and you can usually just go kind of right from one exercise to the other. Similarly, when and how often and how do we progress? Oops, sorry. So we definitely want to do these after a decent warm up. It shouldn't really matter as much if you do it after a hard day or an easy day. You can do it a couple times a week to start. It's going to be a lot less stressful on the body than the heavy lifting at first. So this is a little bit easier to ease into. And how do we progress this? So the most obvious way is we can just do it for longer. Most people don't like doing this as much as, like, say, going out and running in a beautiful forest. So they might not want to do that. The other ways that you can make it a little bit harder is so you can add resistance via rubber bands. Like if you've seen those stretchy bands that you can put around your legs or around your ankles, you can use those. You can use light ankle weights or really light dumbbells for some of the arm movements that we'll talk about. But basically just making the movements a little bit harder, however that is. Sometimes it's literally as easy as like going from doing the exercises barefoot to doing the exercises with your shoes on. Like your shoes weigh a little bit. Like I notice the difference when I do some of these core and hip things with shoes versus not. So even that might be enough of a difference, but you want to progress and keep making it a little bit harder. Okay. So nice, right on time. These are kind of our take homes. So the number one thing, strength training is for everyone. It's not just for sprinters. It's not just for climbers. It will help in every facet of your running, whether you're doing power or injury prevention or both, hopefully. And the thing is, like with these, you really want to figure out what you can build a routine with. So if you only have, 15 minutes a week or something that you can add into your routine, like what are you going to do with those 15 minutes? Which is more important to you? I would probably start with the injury prevention stuff because that will hopefully keep you healthier in the long term. Whereas the power stuff, I think, is more of a performance enhancer than an injury prevention tool. I think if you have time, they're both great. The power stuff is also, again, going to take you a little bit longer. You're going to have to go somewhere with weights. You're going to have to be supervised. It's a little bit more logistically complicated. But I would try to build this stuff in as a routine. So say, okay, on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Sundays, I'm going to do my, my injury prevention routine every single one of those days right after my run, and you just build it in so that it becomes a habit, because that's really when we as athletes, when we try to do things and we try to do things regularly, that's how they actually get done, is when they become a habit. If you finish your run and you're like, oh, maybe I'll do my routine today, or maybe I'll just do it tomorrow, it's like you end up half the time not doing it because you forget, or then tomorrow you're really busy or you're really tired. So for me especially, and the athletes I coach, I always say, okay, like just like don't give yourself a choice, just build it into the structure of the week, and carve out that time and make it sacred, just like you would for your run. So I would even say, you know, for like for some of the injury prevention stuff, especially hip and hip flexor stuff, like you know, you could cut a mile or two off of your run a couple of days a week if you have literally no extra time, and that's still going to be a really, really good investment in the long run, is making good use of that time. So I would try as hard as you can to build a routine around that where you're doing this stuff a couple times a week, but also like try and make it fun. Like if you, I mean, obviously we're still in COVID, so it can be hard to meet up with people. But if you have people you're running with, if you have a club you're running with, like finish your run and then do one of these routines. It can really help to have just like the company and the accountability. You know, put some music on, make it fun, stuff like that. But find a way that you're going to keep to actually doing it regularly. I think that's the important takeaway. Um, I think that's the end of my talking piece. Let me go to gallery view so I can see everyone. Do folks have questions, comments, concerns, hopes, or dreams that they want to share with regards to strength training or not? Whatever you want to talk about. Yeah, you can chat too if you'd rather, or you can just unmute yourself. Thank you, Ashton. And we will have our little workout piece afterwards, but I figured we'd do Q&A first, before we got all sweaty and out of breath.
Can you speak to how like the motor unit changes of strength training for power are similar or different to like doing strides or speed work or that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So strides and top end speed work are kind of like strength training in disguise, and they're a lot more fun. So I often give those to people instead of like straight up strength training. I wanted to stick more to like traditional strength training topics for this talk, but that's a really good question. And the answer is, yeah, like I know that most people don't have time to go to the gym and lift heavy. So I, I probably should just include this in the talk. In replacement of that, what I would do, so strides is a really interesting one, excuse me, because strides are, different people can mean different things when they say strides. So when I talk about strides, the way that I define that is I am starting from a standstill. I'm running for a total of maybe 20 seconds. And during that time, my speed kind of goes like this, where it accelerates, it kind of hits a max, and then it decelerates, maybe for the last 20%. And it's a really important distinction. And the reason I'm going into the weeds here is because I want to differentiate that from like an all out sprint. So I think of strides most of the time more of a what I'm trying to think of how to say this. And this could go beyond my strength training vocabulary because there is a difference I'm trying to elucidate. So with strides, you're only touching that really top end speed for maybe a couple of seconds each stride. They're really good for you, but they're not going to elicit that much motor unit change compared to, for example, like short hill reps, which are something I do myself regularly and give to my athletes. And a short hill, like alactic hill sprints is another term you might have heard. So alactic hills are where you actually it's essentially a sprinting drill, and this is a hill that's like 15 seconds maximum, and you're running. You might jog into it if you have bad acceleration, like I do, and you're basically trying to hit top speed for the whole rep. You're going 100% effort, max power up a pretty steep hill for 15 seconds. That is going to bring on a pretty similar neuromuscular feedback loop that you would get from like a heavy lift. The difference is that a heavy lift is going to be more targeted and more specific to like really specific muscle groups. Like when you do a squat, you are targeting really specific parts of like your quadricep and glutes and low back and all kinds of things. That's, again, someone who's a CSCS could probably describe in more detail. Whereas a short hill is hitting a bunch of that. It's never doing it all in the same way with the same intensity that you are when you're doing like a really heavy, low, slow squat up and down, if that makes sense. So there are subtle differences. And again, this is probably one where if you really wanted me to explain the differences on a physiological level, I would have to go back to Kimber or Carolyn or someone on our team who has a CSCS or a master's and can explain that. But in lieu of that, I can say for people who don't have the time or interest to do heavy lifting and want neuromuscular benefits that are similar to a heavy lift, then all out sprinting drills are about as good as you can get. And basically the replacement I would do is anything where you're running at pretty much 100% effort with full recovery. And that's the really important part, is because when you're doing anaerobic exercise, whether it's a hill sprint or even like an all out 200 or something like that, you really want to make sure that you're aerobically completely recovered and then some, because you are using anaerobic respiration, or excuse me, anaerobic energy, which is not aerobic respiration during that exercise. So like you're using ATP in your butt. Now we're getting like way into it, but like you're using a different energy system than you would be if you were, say doing 200-meter reps at like 5K pace with a short recovery. So anything where you're doing basically all out movement with long recovery, that's going to be your kind of substitute for your heavy lift. Great question. Thanks, Abigail. Other questions? You can put it in the chat if you're shy, or you can just unmute yourself.
It could be questions about anything too.
Yeah, sure.
I'll ask Tyler about.
Cool. Well, if you don't have questions, we can just get to our workout. Cool. And if you think of something else, we can always do that at the end. So I've got to minimize all my Zoom windows here so I can actually see the text on my screen. So this is what we're gonna do here. So again, this one on the left should look pretty familiar because that was the sample workout for our injury prevention thing. I tried to keep this to under about 15 minutes total, so I think we should be good. And so what we're gonna do here, I'll demonstrate these. I've got my little yoga mat set up here. So we'll do each of these ones that are multiple sides, I think we'll do for 30 seconds, and then the others we'll do for a minute. If you want to, again, just watch, that's fine. If you want to come and do these along with me, that's great. I will demo them on video so you guys can see what it is. And again, you'll have the recording so you can see it later. So this first one is really all about hips. So it's about glutes and hip flexors. So your hip flexors are these guys like on the front. They're usually really sensitive. If you poke them, they'll feel really interesting. And your glutes, which are, the back of your butt basically, and then your lower abdominals. So this is really all about kind of the whole area around your pelvis. Because when we go back to that, you can't fire a cannon from a canoe. Like your pelvis is kind of like the canoe. At least it's, if maybe your whole torso is the canoe, but your pelvis is like the part that's in the water, to make a bad analogy there. So you really want a strong glute core. Some people just call that core and like refer to that whole area, anything from basically like, upper abs all the way down to hip flexors. That's kind of your core, which is not a bad way to think about it. So we're going to do that. We'll take a little break and then we'll do a little leg circuit. A lot of these leg exercises are things that you might do in the gym. If you were doing heavy lifting, like sometimes I will do these with, if I have access to a gym, which I haven't in like 14 months, but you can do them in your home. And you can do it more just like as a body weight thing, or put a little bit of weight on by, I've used a weight vest, which some people might have used if you've done that with ultra training for like hiking and stuff, or you can put like a backpack on and just like put some bottles of water in it. If you want to make some of this stuff harder, it's kind of like the poor man's weight vest. So things like that are good ways to make these a little harder. So we'll start with our hips one here. I'm going to turn my camera a bit. I'm also gonna have to take my headphones off. I just
Can I ask
realized.
you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have an opinion one way or the other on wearing shoes versus not wearing shoes for this kind of training?
That is a great question. So I'm not wearing shoes right now. I personally would do what you are used to at first. You don't want to do like if you never walk around barefoot, I would not start out like doing a whole bunch of leg exercises barefoot. The leg stuff will challenge you balance wise a little bit, and having a shoe on will help a little bit with balance. So if like you find yourself doing some of these things like the step ups or the split squats, which again, I'll demonstrate, and you find yourself struggling with those in terms of balance, then I would probably put a shoe on. It'll just give you a little bit of a flatter platform. Or like if you have pain in your feet, just like when you step, if you're on a hard surface or something like that, then you could do it with shoes. So yeah, it's a really good question. I'm not trying to dodge it. I would just say kind of like do what you're used to. Like if you've, I think in the long term, it's probably a little bit better to do it without shoes. But I would say in the short term, if you're not comfortable with that, then do what you're comfortable with, and then maybe spend a few weeks walking around your house barefoot before you jump into like doing a bunch of leg exercises weighted with bare feet or something. Good question though. Thank you. Any other questions before we get started here? Cool. Okay, hang on. I'm gonna take off my headphone so I can. Okay, can everyone still hear me? Nod, thumbs up. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Awesome. So make sure I can see myself. So we are going to, like I said, I'll set a timer here, and we'll go for 1 minute. If people want to do them, I guess I can put this into gallery mode so I can actually pop in and see what you guys are doing. If anyone's doing it along, I only see a couple cameras on, so I assume most of you are just gonna save this for later. So these first two side leg lifts will lie on one side. Make sure I'm in shot here, sorry. Some really bright light, my goodness, I look pale. Okay, so these we're going to lie on our side. We want to be in a straight line, and I'll start my timer. So what we're going to do, we're basically just going to be in a completely straight line. We're going to lift our leg up and lift it down. And you can see these first two are differentiated with toes direction. So we've got our toes up for our first one and our toes down for our second one. So this is one where if you want to make it harder later on, it's really easy. Going back to our shoe question, if you put a shoe on this one, you actually will notice because your shoe does weigh something. And we'll do toes down and then we'll switch sides. That'll be easier. So now we're doing toes down for this one. And you should feel this slightly differently, like the toes down, you should feel a little bit more tension in the front of the glute, and the toes up was a little bit more in the back of the glute. But yeah, putting a shoe on, or even putting a little ankle weight on, or you can even put a resistance band like between your knees there. That'll definitely make it a little harder. All right, that's one side. So now we're gonna do the other side. Same idea. Want to lie down. And we're gonna start with our toes up. You really want to make sure your body is a nice straight line. You'll have a tendency to kind of cave in like this. But you want to try and keep your shoulders back. Nice straight line. Feel that glute engage. You'll feel like your quad a little bit too. Adductor a little bit. And that's 30, so now we'll go to toes down. And do 30 of that. Ankle weights can be a really good way to make these harder too, because most ankle weights will come with these little rods that actually make up the weight in the ankle. So you can start with like, 2, and then like each week you could just add one of those. And they usually don't weigh very much. They'll weigh like an ounce or something, but within, a month, you'll have added a pretty significant amount of weight. Okay, so now we're gonna do flutter kicks. So with these, this is the hip flexor one and the lower ab one. Then we get our back flat, lift our legs up a couple inches, and we're just gonna flutter nice and gently. And this is one where if you haven't done it in a while, you'll really feel it in the lower abs. Totally fine to take a break if that's what you need. But you want to try and keep your legs nice and straight, toes nice and pointed. And try and, maybe about a foot of movement. Oh, my cat. Kodo, your tail's in the picture, buddy. Sorry. No, okay.
And sometimes your cat will come on your chest and crawl on you. Okay, there we go. His butt's right in the face. Sorry, buddy. Come on. Okay. There's our third minute. Okay, now we're gonna do fire hydrants. This name comes from a dog peeing on a fire hydrant. So again, we'll do 30 seconds on one side. Dude, I'm gonna keep you, watch out. And you're just lifting up. Basically, you want to keep your hands and knee nice and steady. And you're lifting up that side of the leg, your leg until it's basically parallel with the floor. And slowly coming back down. And again, you should really feel that in the side of the glute here, even into the TFL, which is the tendon between your top of your hip bone here and your head of your femur. And we'll do the other side. Hi, buddy. He wants to do core. Come on, do your fire hydrants. Go to Pexy. All right, so we're gonna do our other side here. Same idea. Again, all of these pretty much will be made quite a bit harder by adding any kind of weight to your feet. That's how I would do it. Is I would add a light ankle weight and then make it a little bit heavier from week to week or month to month. All right, you just want to lie on the ground. All right, and there's our 30. Excuse me, my friend. Okay, so now we're going to do dead bugs, which is going to be on our back. Again, this is going to challenge our abs and hip flexors again. So we're going to be like an upside down table, and then we're going to lower opposite arms and legs. Come on, dude, I'm sorry. So right arm goes back, left leg goes down, and the left leg follows left arm. It's kind of a weird motion, but you get used to it. And again, you should feel this challenging your hip flexors and low abs. And maybe your backbones, if you're really bony and not on a soft enough yoga mat. I usually prefer to do this on the carpet. All right. Another 10 seconds here. 8, 7. All right. Now we're going to do bird dogs, which is kind of like the opposite. So now we are actually going to be a table, nice and straight, and we're going to balance on opposite arms and leg or knee. So we're going to say right arm, left foot go up. Want to keep everything nice and straight. You basically feel like your back is not moving. So your core is engaged the whole time. You're flexing your glutes when you're kicking out back, and you're flexing your shoulder, kind of your upper back when your arm is out front. And this is one where, again, if you want to progress and make it a little bit harder, you can actually add a really light dumbbell to the hands as well as an ankle weight to the feet. Now I'll make it a little bit harder there. Okay, and then the last thing is our scissor kicks. These are a little bit of the bear. If you haven't done a lot of lower ab or hip flexor work, and especially if you've been working your lower ab and hip flexors like we have. So these are similar to a flutter kick, but you're gonna keep one leg pretty high up, and then you're gonna swap them and hold for a couple seconds. So instead of a constant motion, it's a swap and hold. I just kicked the cat, sorry. And swap and hold. And swap and hold. And swap and hold. If you have really flexible hamstrings, you'll be able to be basically perpendicular to the floor, which I do not. So This is about as much angle as I can get. But ideally, you want your legs to basically be at a 90-degree angle. Do 2 more. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. That's the first half of the workout. Take a second. Have some water if you want. I'm moving this over to the other side. And then we'll do our little leg set here. So these ones on the leg side, I would probably tend to do those by number of reps, like maybe you're only gonna do 10 or 12 reps of those versus like a whole minute like we'll do on the other ones. Just because again, we kind of want to build up to eventually doing these with weights. So we'll start out with a nice deep squat. So one thing that you can do is actually, if you have a chair or a stool, is to actually put that behind you, because when you go to a gym, people will often teach you how to squat like you're sitting down in a chair. And that is really how you want to think about it. And often, like when I haven't done squats in a while, I'll literally put a stool or something behind me. I don't have anything with me right now for that. But essentially what you want to do is sit down like you're sitting down into a chair, and you need to keep balance. So you need to keep your arms out in front of you, and you really want to go down like as low as you can when we're doing a deep squat like this, and then just go back up. And the idea with these, because we're not doing them with any weight, is we want to do them really slow and really controlled. That's actually going to make it harder. So we'll go down really slow and up. And 1, 3, and up. And 4, down, and up. And 5, and down, and up. 6, and up. 7, up. And 8, and up. We'll just do 8 for now, because that feels pretty good. Next thing we're going to do is a step up and step down. I'm looking for where I'm going to be able to do this inside. It's raining out right now, so I had to relocate. I can try and use my couch here. Basically, this is as simple as it sounds. We're going to step up onto something, and we are going to step back down, ideally in the other direction. So with step downs, we want to be really careful because anyone with knee problems, you should just do the step ups. But step downs can be really, really important for especially ultra and trail runners, because we do a lot of vert, we do a lot of uphill and downhill is really hard on your knees. But again, this is why usually with this kind of stuff, you want to make sure you have someone actually watching you do it. Because if I step down from something and I stay too far out front, or I let my knee collapse inward, then all of a sudden, instead of the work of the exercise being on my quadricep, it's going to end up being on my knee and my patellar tendon, which is what runs from your kneecap down to the top of your tibia. And that's how you get quote unquote runner's knee or patellar tendon, or like tear your MCL or something. So try not to do that. If you're at all worried about your knees or you feel weak, then just do the step ups, that's fine. But when we do the step ups, we want to think of it like nice up, hold it here so we feel it in the glute, and then back down. And then we can repeat it on the other side. So again, we go up. This is actually like super hard to balance on because this couch is really soft. But if you're on a step or a stair, you can do 2 stairs sometimes, that's a good one. And then just alternate the feet with which you go up. So we'll do a few more of these. That's 5, 6, 7. And you should really feel the muscle contract in the back, and then move to the glute, like right when you get to the top of the step. So to start out, mostly you feel it in the hamstring, and then finally when you get to the top, you should feel it in the glute. That's kind of that last little flex. When you get to the top, is the side of the butt there. Okay. Split squat. These are great. Sometimes they're called like a Hungarian squat, something like that. You'll need something to put your foot up on. So I'm going to use the arm of the couch here. This is like, what workouts can you do with your couch? And what we want to do, gotta make sure I'm in the frame here, is, so I've got one leg on the ground. My foot is behind me, kind of like I'm running, and I'm, in my back kick here. And so the top of my foot is on, right now, the arm of this couch. And so all my weight is on my left foot. I've got a little bit of weight on my right foot, but mostly it's on my left foot. So this is really just a one-legged squat. And so we're gonna go down on that left leg and nice and slow and controlled, and up. And again, the things we wanna watch for is the knee like wobbling, like let me do it towards the camera. So like if I put my foot back here, when I go down, is my knee doing this? That's something we want to watch out for, because that means my quad is really too weak to control this movement, and therefore I shouldn't be doing it right now. So if I can go down nice and steady and back up, that's fine. If I go down and my knee is just like all over the place, then that's a sign that like, okay, this is not a good exercise for me to do right now. But we'll do a couple. We want to make sure that knee is nice and still. We should feel this in the quad, in the glute. Core should be engaged. Posture should be good. This is a really good running specific exercise. And you can add a lot of weight to this one, make it super hard if you want. And we'll do the other side. Another thing you can do to make this harder without necessarily like adding a ton of weight is if you have one of those like half circle shaped things. I think it's called a Bosu. It's basically a balance pad, anything like that. You can put your foot on the ground on that thing. Makes all of these a lot harder. Any of this one-legged stuff. I'm stuck there with that. Because now you're engaging like all these weird little stabilizing muscles too. Okay, a dynamic lunge. Everyone's probably done one of these. I'm gonna put my camera back to my little yoga mat corner here now. So a dynamic lunge versus a static lunge just means that we are, come on dude, sorry my cat's on the computer. Come on. A dynamic lunge means we're moving, we're dynamic, we're moving through the lunge. So a static lunge would just be, okay, we're in place and we're lunging down. Versus a dynamic lunge means we're starting here with our feet together from a standstill, and we are moving into the lunge. So we're taking a step and lunging and taking a step back. So that's the difference, dynamic versus static. Dynamic is a little bit more runner specific. Again, if you're doing this and you feel pain in your knees, or you notice that your knees are really wobbly, start with the static lunge. It's going to be easier on your knees. And this is another one where if you're not ready for it and you do too much on one side, then you can end up hurting your knees. So this is another good one that you can do on the balance pad. If you want to make it harder, you can either put the balance pad out front and step onto it, or you can do your static lunges on the balance pad. So we'll do a bunch. I think that's 6. I'll do 2 more, and then we'll do the other side, and then we'll do the last ones, which is our side lunges. Cool. So now we'll go on this side. Oh gosh, for some reason, just the right foot. Okay, we'll stay on this side. We'll do left foot. So we're doing down. It's also super common to find that one side is a little bit weaker than the other, or that one side's balance is a little bit better. A lot of people will ask, okay, so should I do more reps on my weak side, or should I add more weight to my weak side so that I'm targeting it more? I've heard both opinions from actual professionals about that in terms of whether that makes sense. The people that I trust the most have said no, that essentially if you're doing the same amount of work on both sides and one side is weaker, then that side's going to be working harder and eventually it'll catch up. So I would recommend keeping everything symmetric. You don't want to knock yourself out of balance. But if you find yourself with like a really strong pronounced imbalance or something, you can always reach out to a strength trainer or a physio or something. Okay, last thing, our side lunges. So similar, this is going to be dynamic, but you can do it as a static lunge. So we're going to start facing laterally this time. Well, facing forward, we're going to step laterally. We're going to step like we're stepping over something. And we're going to go down nice and deep to really feel this in like the outside of the glutes. And then up slowly and then back. And again, if you need to start with just the static one, like just here, you go down and up, and that's it. And then you would go down and up again. So when you're doing them dynamic, you'll do them kind of one side at a time. So you'll do your right foot stepping first. And we'll do a couple more of these. And then we'll do our left side. We'll do one more. And now we'll do our left side. So again, same idea, stepping over something, coming down, up, stepping back. Over, down, up, and back. Over, down, up, and back. Over, down, up, back, and we'll do one more. Over, down, up, and back. And that's all. Those are our 2 sessions. So normally what I would do with these is I would probably, again, going back to routine, like I would do one day where it's like my hips and core day, and then I would do one day that's more like my legs day. So I might do that routine. The first routine we did, I might do it twice through. The legs one, I might do like 3 times through. And again, when we talk about progressing, like I might progress through my 3 sets of the legs one. So if it's my first time doing it in a while, I might just do it like that with no weight, all 3 sets. And then maybe the next week I'll do, 1 set, just body weight, and then 2 sets with a little bit of weight. And then the next week, maybe I'll do, body weight, a little weight, more weight for the 3rd set. So you're kind of building up and progressing not only, from week to week, but even within the workout itself. And that's kind of a good way to think about like almost everything we do with training, whether it's a interval workout or mileage. We're always kind of trying to find different ways to progress through things, whether it's like on the micro level, like in a specific workout, or from week to week to week, or even month to month. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much all I had to say on strength stuff. Does anyone have any questions either about the workout we just did or anything else that I've said that you didn't ask before?
Yeah, I do. Hi again. Did you say that this is the adequate amount if you were doing this after, let's say you went out and did a run, or would you say to do this like 3 times? How does this compare to us just doing this right now versus on a regular day?
That's a really good question. I think if you're just getting started and you've never done this stuff before, and you like actually did along with this, like we just did it, you might be kind of sore tomorrow. So I would say like start here. And if you don't feel sore, then that's great. And you could add a little bit next time. And maybe, yeah, you do like 2 times through this routine. I think that in general, like we have an expression, like it's the dose makes the medicine. So if you have something like these really targeted muscular exercises, for example, you don't have to do that much of them for them to be pretty powerful in the long run. So like the hip and hip flexor stuff, for example, like I would probably give people a workout that's going to take like 12 to 15 minutes that they can do like 2 or 3 times a week. And I think that you'll actually see pretty significant increases in strength doing that in those really specific areas. And that's what's going to help in the long term in terms of injury prevention. So I would start with something like this to kind of gauge where you are, because it's way better to do like the 7-minute routine and have it feel fine than to do the 12-minute routine and then just be like completely wrecked and I like can't lift my legs tomorrow, you know?
On a totally different topic.
Mm-hmm.
Those are awesome. This makes a lot of sense. I've never heard it broken down in this way of like the heavy strength training for the power and this for injury prevention. That makes sense. But on a totally different topic, what's it like running at that altitude or in keto in general?
Oh, I love it. I mean, so plug actually, I am giving a talk on altitude training on Wednesday. It's open to the public. So I'll send that link out to Abigail and she can share it with you guys if you want to come. But long story short, I've always responded pretty well to altitude, so I can train really well here. For some people, I think there's a red line somewhere between like 6,000 and 10,000 feet. And so 9,000 is pretty high for some people. I'm someone who's been able to train pretty well at 9,000 or 10,000 feet. And so for me, I love it. I find I do really well when I train up here and then go back down to sea level or even like more moderate altitude. But it's definitely the kind of thing that you would want to kind of test out for yourself and see like, how do I respond to this? You know, like I've had lots of friends come here. Some of them have done great. Some of them have like really struggled in terms of being able to train effectively up here and just like being able to, you know, hit effective paces and stuff. So I think it's totally person to person, but I love it here. It's like, you know, it's my second home. I've been spending part of my years in Latin America, particularly here in Ecuador and also in Peru since like 2008. So yeah, it's like a second home for me. I love it. Cool. Any other questions? Cool. The last thing I'll say, and I promise this is not going to be like a timeshare pitch. If you guys are interested, Chosky is a coaching company. It's a big part of what we do. We also put on tons of free content like this, like the altitude talk that I mentioned. We have our community membership, which we just launched, which basically gives you access to everything other than the actual coaching. It's super cheap. It's only $8 a month right now if you sign up. We have 8 strength and mobility classes per month. One of those is a functional strength class, which is with Kimber Maddox, who actually is a professional at this. She's a CSCS at a master's. She's amazing. So she leads a 60-minute functional strength class every single week. And then we have a second class, which is on mobility. It alternates a mobility class and a yoga class. Both are specific to runners. And then we do have our free master classes a month. They're all free this month because we're launching them, so they're open to the public. So we have a general one, which is the one I'm giving on altitude. We have a full nutrition series. So that's each month we have a different nutrition topic that's covered. And then we have a women's specific one called Women Talk Wellness, which is hosted by Samantha Pruitt. And all of our female staff are involved in that. It's super, super cool. It's all kind of women in endurance sport issues. All that stuff is available live and then after the fact, and you get like our whole library and stuff too. So I'll send Abigail info on that if anyone's interested in that. And then of course we also have coaching programs if people are interested in that. That's how Abigail got us hooked up. Is she's one of our athletes and it's been crushing and it's great to see. Again, zero pressure. I'm happy to do this kind of stuff for free. It's what we're all about, empowerment, community. That's, you know, not just our motto. We're really about that and helping people and stuff. But if you're interested, it's here. We'll send some info and stuff. So we'll leave you with that unless there are any last questions. I'll also give Abigail my email, my Chosky email. If you guys just have follow-up questions you want to ask, or maybe you're watching this video later and you have a question, feel free to just shoot me an email. It's just ty@chosky.run. That's me, goes right to my inbox. So feel free to reach out if you have anything. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week, everybody. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Safe travels back.
Thank you. Kodo, come here. Now you can come say, come here.
Oh, I can't.
They almost want to get on camera. Oh, who's a big guy? Oh, who's a big kitty? Oh. Ah.